Hello everybody. In today's video, I'm super excited to show you the latest thing that I'm building. And typically you see me talking about low code or no code things, but we are full on code today, baby. And what I mean by that is I have built a single page website that hosts all sorts of details about an event. And so calling it an app is probably a strong word for it, but we could get into semantics later about what exactly constitutes an app versus not. But I mean, it's kind of an app, but it's pretty bare bones. It's simple, but it looks really cool, and it's something that you can use for if you're putting on an event. So let me just walk you through what it actually is. Let me show you the inspiration behind it, which is my ERG at Elastic, the Rainbow Stack group, which is for LGBTQIA+ members and allies here at Elastic. We try to plan an event each quarter, and this quarter we're doing the Rainbow Stack Summit. And what that is it's an opportunity for different members of our group to come and give a talk about anything that's meaningful and interesting to them and share it with, wider groups here at Elastic. So super excited about it. And I've been wanting to practice doing some more stuff with EUI, which is Elastic's design library. I use it all the time at work. So when I say practice more stuff, it was more of like, just keep fleshing things out with it and like build something completely from scratch rather than just like making tweaks on components that already exist. And what EUI is, let me tell you a little bit more about it. It's Elastic's EUI library, and it's kind of like if you've ever worked with any sort of design library, like comparing it to Bootstrap feels very minor. That's not a great comparison, but it's in a similar vein of they've done a lot of the work with building out components, and you can plug them in and customize them. So there's buttons, cards, all of these sorts of things. It incorporates Flex, so you can work with different layouts and do things that you want. You can have forms, there's icons, all sorts of different things. Tables, you're going to see all this here in a second. But basically, yes, you still have to code, but you don't have to build a table completely from HTML scrap or unique React components and divs here and there. You can use these predefined components, move them around, customize them, style them, and do what you need to do with them, and inject your data into them. And so it does a lot of the work for you. And if you're not into coding, this may feel like more than you're interested in, but it's not a bad way to get into it. This is a good way to kind of ease yourself into coding, and someone else has done all of the work for you, so you can just plug it in. Like I said, even someone who codes all the time, like we use stuff like this at work. Like don't reinvent the wheel. So that's my spiel about ElasticUI. There's a great team maintaining it. They're regularly doing releases and adding new features and things, so you can trust it. It's awesome. And so let's dig into what this is. So here's my single page website, and I'm actually going to show you the version of it that I have made as a template, because like I said, I made it and then I realized, this could actually be really handy for other people. So here we have our main page, and it's got a title up here, a logo. I have 2 action buttons because we have 2 different sessions, and so you can add up, and I'll show you the code for this in a second, but you can add 2 different, sort of actions there, and I've got 2 buttons. I've got a hero image here, little footer that tells us more about what's going on, and has 2 CTAs, which if you're familiar with that, that's call to action from my marketing world there. Old habits die hard. But yeah, and then I've got these buttons here. If you open them up, they, on the dummy site, they don't go anywhere, but ideally they would go to your calendar link. And next we have the speakers tab. So notice we've still got the footer and everything here. This is just one big panel that swaps out based on what you've clicked. And we have a card for each speaker. So you can see the cards are styled with, an image, a name, and like a subheading here. And then I use a couple of these, what's called EUI badges, to add different sort of attributes to each speaker, and then a bio here. And notice each of these are on their own little sort of card here. So that's super cool. Had a lot of fun making that, especially once I wanted to parse in the dummy info, the mock information here, and anonymize it a bit. This was really fun. I hope we have some Parks and Rec and Office fans here watching and getting into this. And then this one, I'm super excited about this one. Okay, so this is the Talks tab. And basically, this is all of our talks, and I've grouped it out into a couple different ways. I've got the session that it's part of, the time, title, description. I'm going to explain more about how this works under the hood, but I routed like who's the speaker and then pulled in like their avatar. And I also have a genre if you want to use tags or anything like that. And then lastly, I have an action here for adding it to your calendar. So if you hover over it, it says what it is. And this is just a link that, can grab some piece of information, like if there's a specific link to that, or if you want to add like a reminder or something like that, you can add actions in there. So one thing I'm really excited about on this page, though, I used Moment to grab these timestamps, and then also create a button that let me show them in EDT versus your local time zone. So for instance, I'm in CDT, which is why this is showing CDT. But if I click this, it actually changes the times to EDT. So sometimes I prefer to see things in my own time zone. That's great. But also sometimes I don't trust that, and I'd rather you just show me what it is in Eastern and let me do the math on my own. So I wanted to give people both options. You can see it in your local time and I'll convert it, but if your browser is guessing something wrong or you just want to be double sure, click show times in EDT and it will show you that. And then obviously the button changes to say whatever is the opposite of that. So this is how it works. And I want to show you in the next few minutes under the hood kind of what it looks like. And I could talk a lot about this, and I'm not sure who all yet is going to be watching this. So feel free to post some more comments on here if you're like, wait a minute, you're explaining something and it doesn't make any sense to me. I'd love to do a longer talk about this. I'd love to have calls if people are interested and want to build something like this or have more ideas for features or things to contribute. Like, definitely comment and let me know, because I'm totally down for that. But let's hop over to the code real quick. And I'm going to show you how this is broken out. So first of all, let me get up here. I created some docs to go with it, just to kind of help walk you through it. And I'll actually open that up as a preview over here so you can kind of follow along with me. But we will close out and look over here. So here's the panels that we've got going on here, okay? So basically the way it starts is we've got our main page layout. And what that document looks at is, let me just get rid of this. We don't want any of these over here right now. There we go. So we've got our main page document. And what this is it's basically tracking the state of which tab is selected. And there's a specific ID with it. You can see here's where I define what the tabs are. We've got event, which is that main one, speakers, and then talks. And each of them has an ID. They have a label, an on-click event that changes it sets the state to be what that tab is. And then the content that is associated with it, which is another panel. Another component that I've defined in panels. We'll go more into that in a second, but that's what that does. And then I've also got this statement here that basically shows the selected content. So it's a function that looks at, hey, what is the selected tab right now? And then it pulls the right sort of content from that. And you can see where I inject that here in the page content body. So those are the functions I've got. And then this is just, some basic components, wrapping it in a page, giving it some flex, putting it in a body that's paneled, aka has those panel tabs. And that's where I give it a navbar. And that's another component I've defined. I'll show you in a second, but the tabs are defined from there. And the tabs are defined in here. I just pass it to the navbar component. And then the page content, these are mostly just different styling options on it and props that can relate to how you want it to be set up. And then inside of it, I pass it the actual content body, which again, I'm using the function to pick which one to show based on what the ID is. And then I have a spacer to kind of give it a little bit of space at the bottom there. And yeah, and so that's my main page and how it works. And so let's dive into a little bit about Navbar, or let's see, let me go in order here. So, okay, we talk about all those things. So yeah, let's talk about panels first, actually. So each of these panels, I'm injecting them in here. And so if you're on event, I'm saying, hey, call this event details panel. And so what that is it's basically a couple components. I've got EUI image to render a hero. I'm, linking to the source of the image, giving it alt text. You can play around with some different styling options there. And then I'm using EUI empty prompt just because I kind of like the format of how it looked. I thought it was pretty straightforward. I like that it just threw together a title and buttons and some text. And so I'm just spitting into it what the title is, what the body is, and these different actions, which is where I've created a function, technically a component. I don't know. I'm probably not senior enough to understand exactly. It's a functional component. Maybe that's what I would say it is, because it's a function, but it then returns an actual component of a button. So I'll get back to that in a second, but that's what renders the buttons. And then lastly down here, I'm literally just laying that out on the page. I'm saying, hey, show the hero, and then render the more details, which is that EUI prompt. And so I'll actually, while we're here, go ahead and talk about the add calendar buttons. So what I have here is, like I said, it's literally just a function where you pass it a date and a link, and it's just going to quickly render a button with the link being the link to that calendar event. And then the text inside of it references the date. And so that's how it says, you know, this is the same function producing it. I'm just passing it a different date and link for each one. So fairly simple function there, but that's what that does. And then the speakers panel. This is basically just a map of the speaker's data. So I keep all of my data, and this is where, you know, if you want to get fancy with this, you probably could have this somewhere else and reference it and pull it in. I'm not dealing with hundreds of thousands of things, so it just felt easier to kind of put it here, and I didn't need to go update it dynamically somewhere else. So this worked for me, but I basically have data of the speakers, and it's just one big array of objects with each speaker being an object. So we've got Leslie Knope, a name, title, team, where they're based, short bio. You know, you can obviously put whatever you want in here. The avatar references files from images, and yeah, that is simply what that is. And then in the speakers panel, basically all I'm doing is mapping through that. I'm saying, hey, go through that for each one, create a card, and then I'm just injecting the data from the speakers. So I'm saying, you know, make it their name, make the EUI image, their avatar, make the footer of the card be their bio. Here's different badges I want you to put in the description and styling them, etc. And then putting that all in a flex item and then throwing that in an EUI flex grid, which is really cool because I can define the columns. So if I wanted, let's say I wanted this to be like 2, or maybe I wanted it to be 4 or 5, I could make that whatever I want. And notice it does work with mobile responsiveness, so that's pretty handy. And so, yeah, I just love that I don't have to deal with all that stuff. Sometimes that's fun to play with, but sometimes it's like, I just want to get a site out there and, like, have all that, like, figured out. And it's probably one of my favorite things about EUI is, like, there's a great combination of, like, cool, this is pre-built and ready to go, plug and play. But if you really want to customize something, there's tons and tons of options to do that. So I'm a big fan of that. And that is the speakers grid. And then we've got the talks panel. And so what I've got here is I've got, this is a bit of, there's a lot going on here. So first of all, I'm tracking a state of if you want to see it in EST, technically EDT, but whatever. Basically, if you want to show it in the default time zone or not. And then I'm defining my columns and what they are in that table. So you can see I define the field, the name. The render function is optional. I'm defining that for a lot of these because otherwise it's just going to return the straight up text. But for instance, I can tell it to render a colored badge based on what the date is, or, you know, same with the time. I'll show you this function in a second, but I'm actually taking a timestamp and converting it to show the time based on what you prefer, if you want it to be in local time or EDT. And then, you know, things like title and description, you can see how simple it is. Like I can literally just pass it that. Speaker, same sort of thing here where I'm just passing, here's the avatar, take the speaker and return it in this way. Genre is a tag. And then actions, this is where you can pass it an array of different actions you want. So I have one for adding to calendar. You just define what happens when you want it to click. You can pass it E and it will take things from the item that you click. So for instance, if you want to send an email or something, you can populate it with the session title or whatever you want to do with that. So I thought that was really cool. In future iterations, I'd love to add some more actions here, like send a reminder or, I don't know, various sort of things that you might want to do, like contact the speaker or whatever, submit a question. But for now, that's where that's at. And then while I'm here talking about time, let's talk about that show time function, how that works. So I thought this was going to be harder to make than it really was. All I used was Moment, which is a library for doing all sorts of things. Anytime you need to do something with time, anytime, get it? Definitely, I like Moment. Luxon is a good one as well. So feel free to use that, but I kind of like Moment. And so all I did was I got a user's local time zone. You don't even need anything super fancy for this. This function is what goes and looks at your browser. It's like, what time zone are you in? And then I use this function of show time where I pass it the timestamp and I check the time, which is basically like I don't know, probably need a better variable name for that, but that's basically where I'm looking at check should we put it in EST or local time. And then I just define what each of those are, and local time is, you know, the timestamp. It's a moment function where it takes the timestamp and the local time zone and then spits out the time in that. And again, that just references there. So for me, what that's doing is it's saying, hey, here's what the actual timestamp is in like GMT time. Brittany's in America/Chicago, so let's put it in that and render it that way. And so that's what that's returning. If you'll see if the state is that you want to see it in your local time. Otherwise, it's going to show you an EST, which is, or EDT, technically, I think, since we're in summer, but basically America, New York time. So that is what we have for that. And then back to Talks panel. Yeah, that's the toughest part, rendering that. And then I have a button where you can toggle it. And again, that's just literally a button. I set the width for it, gave it an icon on click, just changing the state, just like a toggle. Whatever it is, make it the opposite. And then, you know, that's how we change the text, by showing whatever the state currently is. Again, show the opposite. And then render talk table is literally just showing the table with the items. We tell it, here's where to get that data from. And again, you want those, you want that data to match those headers. So for instance, I showed you the speakers, but here's what the talk data looks like. And it's session date, time, title, description, genre, blah, 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 blah. So we'll come back to the find speaker in 1 second, but that's how we do all of that. And then render talk table, it's all there. And then I'm just putting it all together, right? I'm making a flex group. I'm saying, hey, put this button at the top. Then below that, just render the table. And so let's go back real quick to the find speaker button. So I thought this was a really fun one. I'm sure someone has a better way of doing this, but what I did is I actually took, I created a function that if you pass it a string, it's going to go look at another set of data and find that, and then return basically what we need about that. And so literally how this works is I'm able to say, hey, find Leslie Knope here. You know, I'm passing you a string. I'm telling you who the speaker's name is. And then it's able to use that to go find her whole speaker object. Leslie Knope. It's like, hey, wait, we said to look at name for Leslie Knope. Look for a name with whatever string you passed, and we found it. And so it like grabs that whole object. And that's where I'm able to reference like speaker.avatar over in here. I'm able to reference like speaker.avatar and get their name because I have access to a whole speaker object there, because I've already defined, I've passed all of those details in this, sorry, I keep losing the speaker one because, no, I'm on speakers, duh. Sorry, talk one. Because this function returns that whole speaker object. Where on earth? Talks, there we go. This speaker function, it returns the whole object of basically everything. So I have access to Leslie Knope's entire speaker object here. So I can just reference the name, the avatar, whatever I need to there. So I thought that was pretty handy, pretty cool. Other notable components, these are pretty straightforward, but we've got the Navbar. It's just a UI page header component, which is what sets it up the way it does, where you can pass it a logo, a title, and actions. Right side items, which I just have those two buttons there. Again, coming from that function that I made, the functional component that returns button. And then we have bottom bar, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bottom bar. And again, it's a component. You can do what you want with it. You can pass things into it. I'm passing text. I'm passing header. I'm passing button. I wasn't using these buttons anywhere else, so I didn't feel the need to like make a component for them. They're unique there, so I just passed them in right there, and bada boom, bada bing, that's it. And then on main page, I just kind of, bring all of that together with the nav bar, the bottom bar, and the page content that swaps out based on tabs. So that's the important stuff there. Two other functions, actually. I don't want to keep going too much longer, but I do want to show you genre tags. So you noticed over here, I basically have a function where it takes what the string is and then gives it a color based on that. So if you have different categories of talks and you want to be able to style them like that, all you need to do is define that in here. Like if it's called this, what color do you want to make it? And then over in the talks panel, that's where I run the function on it to grab what the color is. So that's pretty cool. And then I also really like this one. There's probably a better way to do this as well, but I really wanted to make the text rainbow, and I didn't want to like actually sit and write out a span for each single letter. So instead, I made a map that does it. And basically, I just defined what the colors are, and that needs to be the exact length of the string. And then I defined what the letters were, and obviously that's rainbow stack, and with a space in the middle there. And then, yeah, rainbowed letters is just going through each letter, and based on the index, it's grabbing where that is. So it's taking R, this color, A, this color, and then giving it a font family, and then returning that as a span, and then it puts it all together in a span at the end there. So rainbow's letters is basically one big span inside of a strong in span element. So there's probably better ways to do that. I thought it was kind of cool and hacky, but yeah. So that's effectively what it is. And yeah, I think I've covered everything in here, the talks, the navbar, the notable functions. So yeah, I'm super excited about this. I know it's kind of simple and it's not the most complicated app you've ever seen, but I think it looks really nice. It wasn't all that hard to build. I was able to have a lot of fun with it and add some advanced features that make it kind of more than just, returning simple data that I've plugged in there. And I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm hoping it's useful for other folks. I made this repo. Feel free to fork it and use it for whatever site or whatever event you want to do. I'm probably going to update the README to include some more contributing guidelines and like things you need to do specifically if you want to use it. Like I want to include a checklist of here's what you need to change just in case you don't want to figure that out on your own. And then I also, I'd love some help if anybody has some other features and you want to come contribute something to here. I'd love to convert it to TypeScript. I'd love to, do a couple other things to it. So if you find this interesting, feel free to use it. If you've got some ideas for features, create an issue and or create a pull request. I'd love to see it. So thanks for watching, and let me know what you think.